East Alton is close to my heart. As Dwayne had mentioned, for those of you that haven't been traumatized by my background, I started actually my professional working career. I was a loan officer and the Grim Reaper for the First National Bank of Wood River. And what I mean by the Grim Reaper was that I was the heavy. I was the guy that went around and collected all the bad loans and the cars. And back in those days, if you remember Mike McClintock, he loved to loan truckers money on their trucks and trailers and everything else. And you talk about stirring up a hornet's nest when you try to go repossess an 18-wheeler from somebody who uses that to earn their living. And just thankfully I didn't get killed down in the stockyards in National City, if you remember that place. But after doing that for a few years, I went ahead and decided that I was going to get into law enforcement. At least they would give me a gun. I never could talk the bank into letting me have a gun. And I think if I would go back and count them up, I probably had more guns per capita stuck at me in my repossession days than I have actually in the 24 years that I've been a police officer. So, but those were good days. Went to work for the city of Wood River and then eventually for the sheriff's office. And obviously the Madison County and the regions and the cities that we work with, very close. I am a deputy commander with the major case squad, and there's some towns that they call you and you beat your head against the wall 4 or 5 times before you ever go down there. But when I came down to the village of East Alton, I expected nothing other than the red carpet treatment, and obviously that's what I got with Mayor Bright and Joe and Dwayne and Major Archer. So the sheriff was supposed to come down and speak with you for a few minutes today. And if you remember in the media here, what's 10 days or so ago, we actually had 3 heroin deaths in one weekend. And it is a major problem that we're dealing with. In the last 5, 6 years, we've noticed the big increase in the heroin deaths. If you've got children that are vulnerable, definitely keep your medications locked up. That's probably one of the best pieces of advice I can give you when it comes to teenagers and young adults. It seems to, when you talk with heroin addicts, that they'll tell you that they maybe suffered an injury or someone known to them suffered an injury, and then they got into the pain medications, and then they would buy them for $5, $10 or something like that, and then the addiction starts, and then the cost of that addiction gets higher, and then the word of the heroin and the low cost of the heroin comes their way, and that's where the heroin addiction will start. And it's a terrible problem, a terrible problem. And the sheriff, state's attorney's office, Tom Gibbons and Steve Nunn have decided to go at it maybe with a different approach other than obviously the law enforcement side of it, reach out to the community counselors and school officials and so on, and just see if we can make a difference that way. As long as we keep trying to swing the bat, at least we're trying to do something. We're losing the war on it. I'm telling you up front, we're losing the war on the heroin addictions. We really are. But we're doing what we can with the tools that we got right now. So, Tommy may feel like this is a broken record, but I wanted to speak for you, with you for just a few minutes on our jail project. When you go to the ballot on March 18th, or early voting actually starts next week, you'll see on the ballot whether or not the county ought to issue a jail bond. There's different feelings on that. I understand those feelings. We're not arguing on how to pay for the project. The sheriff, myself, we've been involved in every meeting that has gone on when it talks about remodeling our jail. We don't hold the checkbook. We're just the caretaker of the building that is there. And that building is opened up officially in 1980. The building, if you would think, it's 34 years old now, and you would think, well, it's a 34-year-old building. You know, why is it in such disrepair? It's a building that operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This morning, our jail count was 280. We have capacity for 296, And on most days, we are in that 280 to 300 range with inmates. That building never shuts down, and we equivalent that to running a hotel with people that really don't want to stay in your hotel. So they're not going to treat it very nice. Doors are constantly opening and closing. The pipes develop pinhole leaks. They'll spray on the back of the contained cells that are surrounded by, obviously, concrete blocks and reinforcement and everything else. But eventually that rust starts to take hold. And if you don't go in and fix those things on a routine basis, then eventually it gets to the point where it's going to be unsafe. And the Department of Corrections comes in and inspects our jail annually. We have the grand jury that come in and inspect our jail 2 or 3 times a year, and they'll issue a report. Now, they'll come in and take a look at you, and they'll see things, and they'll give you some report that says, you're doing a good job, you know, the inmates are taken care of, they're medicated when they need to be medicated, the proper procedures are being followed, and so on and so on. But it's just like going to the doctor. That the doctor can look at you, say, well, you look okay. But until you get on the inside and the doctor does tests and MRIs and x-rays and things like that, then he really can't tell what's wrong with you. And that's what's going on inside our building. The electrical is failing, the plumbing is failing, the heating and cooling systems are failing. We have fire systems that should be installed in areas that we've grandfathered in those areas, that if we go into a big remodeling project, then we're going to have to replace those things. We've got one area that we call it the rec room, and why we still call it that, I've got no idea. We do not use it for recreation for the prisoners. It's an area in which that we've chose not to do anything with in the event of something bad happening within our building, that we can shuttle those 280, 90 some prisoners into that area to keep them away from whatever's bad going on inside our building. But if you remember, when they built the county jail, it was a flat roof. Then the roof started leaking. Well, then they came over with a metal roof, drilled about 20-some thousand holes throughout the week in top of that flat roof, and didn't think about our 7 or 8 inch rain that was going to come on Saturday and Sunday and pretty much flooded our building. But with that metal roof, it basically did not create a firewall for that recreational area where we would shuttle those prisoners. So if the building would catch on fire, the smoke's going to go up into the roof, and then the smoke's eventually going to filter into that recreational area, and we're going to choke all our prisoners out with smoke inhalation.
And that's
so the next
a bad thing.
is to shuttle them. I'm sorry.
And that's a bad thing.
Oh yeah, definitely. So when it comes to paying the lawsuits out to your taxpayers,
I'm with you now.
for all the people that had no concern whatsoever, for Uncle Fester that got arrested and why he's been locked up in the county jail until he died of smoke inhalation, they want to sue you for $2 or $3 million. So we develop. It's just like the crisis plans that you deal with in the school. We have those within our building, that we would shuttle them to the bullpen area, obviously with guys with all kinds of guns on them to watch for them, because you stick them outside, they're going to try to escape them. So we then develop the backup plans to move them to the state institutions or the other county jails if we're able to do that. So the remodeling project in our building, other than the jacuzzi bathtub that I've asked for in my office, the front office, and I'm teasing on that. Sandy kind of looked at me wrong. The building itself, the administrative offices, other than paint and new carpet, that's it. You know, the sheriff's not getting a big fancy office. I'm not getting a big fancy office. Our building and our administrative offices are pretty much going to stay the same. What that will do is, and I insisted on this, is that our lobby area, if you've ever been to our county jail, if you walk into our lobby area now, and I know Larry, you're up there, Pastor, a bunch, you have to go through our administrative people, and then you eventually have to walk back into our jail. It disrupts 2 or 3 different parts of the building. And what that project will do is move anything that deals with our jail over to the west side of our building. The Sally Port would move to that side of the building where it'd be a drive-through Sally Port. The Sally Port now, it's on a hill, it's on an incline. I know you guys have had to deal with this, especially in bad weather. It's an accident waiting to happen. You got to pull up the big hill, into the garage, drop your prisoner off, and then back out. It's not a drive-through. It is a safety concern that the doors do not open until that prisoner has walked into another door. And we've been trying to address that issue. The jail visiting. If you've ever gone up to our county building and our county jail on a visiting day, you have to wade through a lot of people that are there to visit Uncle Fester. And these people, chances are, the ones that are up there visiting the inmate might have been an inmate last week. So you may need to just go up and report that your license plate was stolen, or you need to get a copy of a police report. And you've got to wade through this group of people that are up there for jail visiting. We're trying to address that issue to that side of the building too. The plumbing, the HVAC system, the ways that you enter our lobby and the ways that you address getting a police report and those type things is basically the only thing that that jail project will do. It's going to be expensive. It's going to happen one way or another, and it's going to happen. It's just a matter of whether or not these bonds get issued. So the building is in need of repair. It would not be cheaper to tear the building down and build a new one. That would be a lot more expensive. But the things that need to be repaired inside that building are going to have to be repaired, whether it's this year or next year or the soon years to be following there on out. So any questions on any of that, Pastor?
Will you increase capacity at all in this project?
No, and that's been a big question on that. And the crime rate, and I think the chief will probably agree with me, we don't see the crime rate really increasing tremendously that we would need to increase the capacity in our jail. We deal with the chief judge's office and the state's attorney's office and the public defender's office enough that when that count gets to capacity and people are going to have to start sleeping on floors, that the court system can work within itself to move some of those people out, whether it's move them on out on probation or move them on to the Department of Corrections. If we increase capacity with bed space in our jail, then obviously it's going to be more of an expense on you with personnel. The Department of Correction mandates that we have a certain amount of staffing for the certain amount of inmates that we're able to hold. So if we would increase that by 100, we'd have to increase at least 2 guards per shift, 24 hours a day, and that includes retirement benefits, health benefits, and salary, and uniform expenses. So the staffing, or the capacity of our jail would stay the same. Any other questions on that? Yes, sir.
On the ballot, is there going to be a question about whether the project should be done, or is it just the funding mechanism?
It's just the funding mechanism. It's a yes or no. Obviously, the yes would be that the bonds should be issued. The no question is no, the bonds should not be issued. And I'll give you what the argument is. The cost is estimated somewhere between 18 to 22 million as to what it's going to cost to remodel the jail. The county has X amount of dollars, and I'm not going to quote. It's somewhere in the $20 to $25 million range. Joe may know more of an accurate figure on that than I do. That the county actually has in reserves right now. Now you get different arguments. That money is earmarked for this money is earmarked for that. We've got X amount of money that's set in reserves. We've got these 5-year capital outlay projects that need to be done. The main courthouse building is in need of $2 or $3 million worth of repairs. But then you've got the other side of the coin that says, well, but you've got this money here that you could spend and move towards that without issuing the total amount in the bonds. And the only debt that the county has right now is the jail bonds that are about ready to expire. And even though I was in the banking business, I've forgotten more about the banking business probably than I ever knew. that if the bonds are issued, that the county's credit rating would improve. And then the argument is that, well, you know, why should you spend that money if you don't need to spend that money if you've got that money? So I do try to stay out of that argument. Matter of fact, I've talked more about the money issue than I ever have in any of the meetings. But just to give you a simple explanation of it, and to be honest with you, that's about all I can give you on